I was on my other YouTube channel, and I was trying to figure out why I couldn't see it because I always want to type on my laptop while I'm live to interact. And there hasn't been much interaction. There hasn't been much traffic on this, but whatever. It's good to see you guys this afternoon. Whatever. Let's mute. And if you make any kind of request, I will be more than happy to oblige with an impersonation. Not just Darth Vader. I can sort of do others. Other impersonations. All right. Because, yes, this is Darth Vader Unlimited, but it is a Star Wars channel. All right. So it's not just a matter of only Vader. Okay. And let's get some music going. Let's turn it down some. Oops, that's too loud. All right, I hope that's good. I hope it's not too loud. I hope I can be heard. But today I want to talk primarily about the Phantom Menace. And that is the first movie to come out since the original trilogy ended. Okay. So we know in 1977, Star Wars came out. In 1980, The Empire Strikes Back came out. And Return of the Jedi was the last of the original trilogy, which came out in 1983. They were 3 years apart. Okay, George Lucas's movies were 3 years apart. The Phantom Menace didn't come out until 16 years later. And it was in May of 1999. I remember seeing it in the theaters. And just like the original trilogy, George Lucas had a 3-year gap between each movie. 3 years later, 2002, Attack of the Clones came out, and 3 years after that, in 2005, Revenge of the Sith came out, concluding the Star Wars prequel trilogy. So there was a long gap in time for us Star Wars fans, us original generation Star Wars fans. What I mean by original generation, I mean those that grew up on the original movies while they were in the theaters. Okay? Now, I don't remember The Empire Strikes Back. I just remember images. Just images, really, feelings. Okay, I remember images. I remember being in love with Star Wars, and I was old enough to remember seeing Return of the Jedi in the theaters, and that was in 1983. So I think I just aged myself, but it's all good. So from then until the Phantom Menace, there's a long gap. You know what I mean? It's 16 years, but think about it. Imagine being 6 years old and then being 22 the next time a Star Wars project comes out. It's 16 years, but we're talking just a whole new train of thought, a whole new school of thinking, all new expectations for movies. And that's what happens. It's like you fall in love with movies, you fall in love with characters as a kid. And then when you get older, you go, they were all right, but yeah. And unfortunately, that's what comes with growing up. You know, you're like, I can't believe I like this stuff, but I try not to get caught up too much in that. But again, it's a pleasure to be here. And I want to do something different, if you don't mind. But I want to read a passage from James Luceno, or Luceno, I'm not sure how you pronounce his name. And he is the author of Dark Lord, The Rise of Darth Vader. All right. And this is not the crux of today's live broadcast. Today's live broadcast is mainly going to be about the Phantom Menace. All right. I'm going to do a deep dive into the Phantom Menace, okay? But here's a passage from Dark Lord, The Rise of Darth Vader. Okay. Here we go. His alloy lower legs were bulked by strips of armor similar to those that filled and gave form to the long glove Anakin had worn over his right arm prosthesis. In case you've forgotten, Anakin Skywalker's right arm was cut off by Count Dooku on Geonosis. All right. So while he and Obi-Wan were fighting Count Dooku, Obi-Wan Kenobi was subdued because he was not a match for Count Dooku. Anakin thought he was. He started off with 2 lightsabers. Count Dooku just said, shit, cut one lightsaber in half, and then was down to one-on-one. And Anakin was no match for Count Dooku. So Count Dooku cut his arm off. The Force pushed him away and knocked him out. That's the power of the Force push. So Anakin, had a mechanical right arm, okay? And he had a long glove almost up to the elbow, okay? So that's what this is talking about. I'll continue. What remained of his real limbs ended in bulbs of grafted flesh inserted into machines that triggered movement through the use of modules that interfaced with his damaged nerve endings. So basically, Darth Vader's legs were cut off and both arms in his battle with Obi-Wan Kenobi on Mustafar. So this is what they're talking about. Now, when a lightsaber cuts your limb off, okay, and this is something that they failed to portray in Star Wars, because when Obi-Wan Kenobi cuts off, what's the name, Ponda Baba's arm, there's like blood, and that's not how it works scientifically. With that much heat, because the lightsaber is basically a laser, it would immediately cauterize the wound. So that's why when Luke's hand was cut off, it wasn't blood splurting out, and I'm sure audiences wouldn't want to see that anyway. When you saw Anakin's arm cut off, there wasn't blood sporting out. When Obi-Wan Kenobi was hitting his arm and right above his knee, there's no blood or anything like that. And we know when Count Dooku was subdued by Anakin, there's no blood. There's no spewing of blood because the wound is cauterized by the heat of the lightsaber. So when Anakin's legs were cut off, this is what they're talking about. They're just bulbs of just flesh there. Okay? And it says that, but instead of being Durasteel, the components of the artificial legs, the medical droids had substituted an inferior alloy and had failed to inspect the strips that protected the electromotive lines. I don't really know what that means, okay? So I'm going on. As a result, the inner lining of the pressurized bodysuit was continually snagging on places where the strips were anchored to knee and ankle joints. Now, that sounds painful. Basically, what that's saying right there is when Darth Vader would walk or just move or just stand, parts of his leather suit would get caught. Ouch. I'm just saying, ouch, think about that. In the attachments where his artificial prostheses are. So I can't imagine leather, which is a tough material, being right in the marrow of my bones. Being inside, that would be utter and complete pain. Okay, let's go on. The tall boots were a poor fit for his artificial feet, whose claw-like toes lacked the electrostatic sensitivity of his equally false fingertips. Raised in the heel, the cumbersome footgear canted him slightly forward, so he had a natural heel on his artificial foot. So instead of being flat-footed, they said it was inclined some. So basically, instead of standing straight, Darth Vader was kind of like leaning forward because of the inclined heel, forcing him to move with exaggerated caution lest he stumble or topple over. All right? Now, if Vader were to stumble or topple over, everybody on the bridge is going to die because Darth Vader will not be humiliated in that fashion in front of his subordinates. So it's good for them that he had this kind of focus, this control, this cool, calm, and collected persona, even though he's just a cold-blooded killer. Worse, they were so heavy that he often felt rooted to the ground or as if he were moving in high gravity. So think about that. His artificial legs are so heavy. Sorry about that. His artificial legs were so heavy that it felt like he was rooted to the ground sometimes. Because remember, all he has to pull on, okay, he doesn't really have knee joints because they're artificial. So his quads are doing all the work. And like it says here, there's not a lot of electrostatic sensitivity in his feet. So it's almost like he has two drop feet. You know, when you like lose, like, I think nerve. Let me look that up real fast. Drop foot. So I can sort of sound like I know what it's about. Okay, the definition of foot drop is when you have difficulty lifting the front part of your foot. Because remember, it says that his heel is inclined on his artificial feet. This may cause you to drag your foot when you walk. Foot drop, also called drop foot, can be caused by a problem with the muscles, nerves, or anatomy of your foot or leg. So Darth Vader's in a world of pain, okay? So it's hard for him to even walk or to maintain his balance. It says the tall boots were a poor fit for his artificial feet. It says they were so heavy that he felt as if he was moving in high gravity. So there's not a lot of coordination when he plants his feet. So that's why I compared it to drop foot. But he didn't drag them. But just the absolute focus of his quad muscles were enabling him to put his feet down without like lumbering or like. What good was motion of this sort if he was going to have to call on the Force even to walk from place to place? He may as well have resigned himself to using a repulsor chair and abandoned any hope of movement. So basically, this is what's going on in his mind. It's like there's so much difficulty in him walking. He's like, do I have to use the Force just to walk? And I apologize if I'm sweating because, as I said, it's about 90-something degrees. I don't have on the fan or the air conditioning because I want this live stream to sort of go without a hitch. So if you see me sweating profusely, I may have to excuse myself so that I won't be drenched. Okay? And speaking of which, I'm going to do that right now. Give me 1 second. This is the channel you have been looking for. This is Darth Vader Unlimited. So as I said, it's about 90-something degrees, or close to 90, like 80-something degrees. So the sweat is sort of pouring. Welcome to Darth Vader Unlimited. Please chat if you can. Put a request in the live chat if you'd be so inclined, and I'm glad you're here, okay? As I was saying, I'm just reading from Dark Lord, The Rise of Darth Vader, which was written by James Luceno, and it's talking about Darth Vader and the discomfort of the iron lung of the suit, okay? So it says, the defects in his prosthetic arms mirrored those of his legs. So the faults in his legs are the same thing going on his arms. So we talked about his legs, how his suit would get caught into the joints of the artificial knees. Just painful thing about it. And he had an elevated heel on his artificial feet. The boots didn't really fit. He should have been clunky as he walked, but it just took the absolute concentration just to walk from place to place. So if there's that much problems in his legs, it's saying the defects in his prosthetic arms mirrored those of his legs. So he had just as much problems with his arms. Only the right one felt natural to him. I'm still reading from the excerpt. Though it too was artificial, and the pneumatic mechanisms that supplied articulation and support were sometimes slow to respond. So imagine me wanting to like maybe just show off this chain, okay? So that means it was slow to respond. That means mentally I'm sending the commands to my arms and they don't respond right away. So it's like, so it might be one of those like, so we talk about, he could have been very clumsy and very like dim-witted, okay? Because of this faulty surgery he had, okay? And it says the weighty cloak, his cape, and pectoral plating so restricted his movement that he could scarcely lift his arms over his head. And he had already been forced to adapt his lightsaber technique to compensate. You see that a lot in The Empire Strikes Back. When Darth Vader's like chopping down, he can't do this, okay? So he has to like lean back right in the small of his back. He has to lean all that back just to do this. Especially when he's pointing the lightsaber at Luke's throat, he said, "You are beaten. It is useless to resist." And Luke kind of hits the blade away, and Vader doesn't do this. His whole body is going like this because he can't lift his shoulders too high. And you also see that when Vader's about to take Luke's head off, okay, after he hit Vader in the shoulder, and he goes, he can only do this. He can't do this. So it's just like, so that's what they're talking about, the restriction of his movements, okay? He could probably adjust, I'm going to go back to the excerpt. He could probably adjust the servo drivers and pistons in his forearms to provide his hands with strength enough to crush the hilt of his new lightsaber, okay? With the power of his arms alone, he had the ability to lift an adult being off the ground. You saw that in Star Wars, where he killed Captain Antilles. He had him by the throat. It was like, if this is a consular ship, where is the ambassador? And he threw him with one arm, okay? That's what they're talking about. But the Force had always given him the ability to do that. especially in moments of rage, as he had demonstrated on Tatooine and elsewhere. What's more, the sleeves of the bodysuit didn't hug the prosthesis as they should, and the elbow-length gloves sagged and bunched at his wrist. So we're just about just chronic pain and discomfort while Vader is in the suit. So it looks cool to us, but it was just a nightmare for him. Gazing at the gloves now, he thought, this is not seeing with his eyes. The pressurized mask was goggle-eyed, fish-mouthed, short-snouted, okay, and needlessly angular over the cheekbones. So it's a lot of space in the mask. When it should be like holding him there, there's a lot of space there. Coupled with a flaring dome of helmet, the mask gave him the forbidding appearance of an ancient Sith war droid. The dark hemispheres that covered his eyes filtered out light that might have caused further injury to his damaged corneas and retinas, but in enhanced mode, the half-globes reddened the light and prevented him from being able to see the toes of his boots without inclining his head almost 90 degrees. So basically, he has no peripheral vision with his mask on. That's what it means by he can't see his toes without bending his head down 90 degrees. Okay? That's a right angle, 90 degrees. He didn't come here for geometry. He came here for Star Wars. All right. Listening to the servo motors that drove his limbs, so he can hear the motors in his suit, he thought, this is not hearing. The med droids rebuilt the cartilage of his outer ears, but his eardrums, having melted in Mustafar's heat, had been beyond repair. So his eardrums melted. Jesus. Sound waves now had to be transmitted directly to implants in his inner ear, and sounds registered as if issuing from underwater. So it's like a... Worse, the implanted sensors lacked sufficient discrimination, so that too many ambient sounds were picked up, and their distance and direction were difficult to determine. So if somebody screams down the way, Vader just hears that like all at the same time, along with whatever he's like trying to focus on. So it's like, rah! So the conversations of crew members in the crew pits are happening all at once. And because of his suit, because of the mask, it's difficult to determine who's saying what or whatever. Sometimes the sensors needled him with feedback or attached echo or vibrato effects to even the faintest noise. Okay? Now, if you've ever been in a place with a live microphone, feedback is when the microphone is too close to the speaker. All right? Allowing his lungs to fill with air, he thought, this is not breathing. Here, the med droids had truly failed him. From a control box he wore strapped to his chest, a thick cable entered his torso, linked to a breathing apparatus and heartbeat regulator. The ventilator was implanted in his hideously scarred chest, along with tubes that ran directly into his damaged lungs, and others that entered his throat, so that should the chest plate or belt control panels develop a glitch, he could breathe unassisted for a limited time. So the channel's called Darth Vader Unlimited, but Vader was very limited, okay, because of the suit. But listen to this. The control box is strapped to his chest. A thick cable entered his torso, linked to a breathing apparatus and heartbeat regulator. So he's almost like the Borg. There's just like so many machine parts that are keeping him alive that replace his vital organs, okay? But the monitoring panel beeped frequently and for no reason, and the constellation of lights served only as steady reminders of his vulnerability. So this is just the icing on the cake for Darth Vader to self-loathe, to hate himself, okay? And everyone around him, all right? The incessant rasp of his breathing interfered with his ability to rest, let alone sleep. And sleep, in the rare moments it came to him, was a nightmarish jumble of twisted, recurrent memories that unfolded to excruciating sounds. The med droids had at least inserted the redundant breathing tubes low enough so that with the aid of an enunciator, his scorched vocal cords could still form sounds and words. But absent the enunciator, which imparted a synthetic bass tone, his own voice was little more than a whisper. So without this enunciator, you would not hear that strong, powerful James Earl Jones voice that I usually try to impersonate. So instead, he would sound more like Sebastian Shaw in Return of the Jedi when Luke removed the helmet and the breathing apparatus. You know, he says, No. Go, my son. Leave me. So he's like, I'm dead. Okay. He could take food through the mouth as well, but only when he was inside a hyperbaric chamber, since he had to remove the triangular respiratory vent that was the mask's prominent feature. So the prominent feature of the mask is that sort of triangle with the two tusks coming out of it. Okay. So he could eat, but he had to remove the mask. All right. So it was easier to receive nourishment through liquids, intravenous and otherwise, and to rely on catheters, collection pouches, and recyclers to deal with liquid and solid waste. So we're talking about somebody that's not even a man anymore, okay? But all those devices made it even more difficult for him to move with ease, much less with any grace. The pectoral armor that protected the artificial lung weighed him down. The armor weighed him down, as did the electro-studded collar that supported the outside helmet. So that's the thing that goes into the back of his neck on the mask. Necessary to safeguard the cybernetic devices that replaced the uppermost of his vertebrae. The delicate systems of the mask and the ragged scars in his hairless head, which owed as much to what he had endured on Mustafar as to attempts at emergency trephination during the trip back to Coruscant aboard Sidious's shuttle. I do not know what trephination is, so I'm going to look that up. All right. So what is trephination? Trephination, also known as trepanning or trepanation or burr-holing, is one of the oldest surgical procedures known to humanity and refers to a surgical procedure in which a circular piece of bone is drilled and excised, most commonly from the human skull. So it says that, and there's a picture of it here. Basically, it's a skull with a big old hole in it. So let's go back to the excerpt. And it says that the ragged scar in his hairless head, which owed as much to what he had endured on Mustafar as to attempts at emergency trephination during the trip back to Coruscant aboard Sidious's shuttle. So the pain, the scars were almost as bad as having a piece of his skull cut out to, I guess, implant something in his brain. I don't know. The synth skin, this is back to the excerpt. The synthetic skin, sorry about that substituted for what was seared from his bones, itched incessantly. So it's about artificial, like skin grafts, okay? It constantly itched, and his body needed to be periodically cleansed and scrubbed of necrotic flesh. Let's look up necrotic flesh. Now, NECRO usually means like death or dead or whatever. All right, affected with, characterized, or producing death of a usually localized area of living tissue. All right, so that means that his skin, what was left, was constantly dying, and it had to be scrubbed all the time. So we do see him in the Bacta tank, and I don't know if the Bacta tank does all that, but I'm pretty sure there was more of a therapeutic sort of procedure that he had to go through on a regular basis. All right. Already he had experienced moments of claustrophobia, which I can understand. I mean, not to this extent, but just wearing a Vader mask is a very claustrophobic experience. Moments of desperation to be rid of the suit, to emerge from the shell. So he's just like, he's claustrophobic. He's closed in. He can't do anything about it either. He needed to build or have built a chamber in which he could feel human again. And that's the end of the excerpt. So a very painful existence Darth Vader has. And they don't even mention anything psychological. They're just talking about the physical aspects of the suit. Well, excuse me. The only psychological part is this last portion. It's about claustrophobia. That's psychological. Okay. But to be stuck in that sort of Frankenstein suit, having limited motion, when you were once the hero of the Republic, Chancellor Palpatine called Anakin. He wanted him to be the eyes and ears of the Republic. He said he's going to be the most gifted. He said he was the most gifted Jedi he ever met. He said that people are going to be fearful of your power. So this is what Anakin Skywalker was told by Chancellor Palpatine. So for him to now be Darth Vader, to have none of the same power, the ability, the limberness, or any of the agility, would have to just be a psychological nightmare for Darth Vader. All right. So this is what Obi-Wan Kenobi means in Return of the Jedi when he says he's more machine now than man, twisted and evil. Because all of this is born of his hatred, born of him being converted to the dark side. Okay. So that was just a little excerpt I wanted to read to you guys. So if anyone's on the line, please chat. Please let me know you're there. Thumb up the video if possible. Or if you get a moment, just say, hey, glad to see you on, or whatever. As you can see, I don't have the hood on or anything because I don't want to melt. Okay. As I said, it's 80-something degrees here in Philadelphia. All right, so before we get to the Phantom Menace, our deep dive, which is the primary reason for going live today, let's see if there's any Star Wars news that's worth talking about. All right, so the website is Fandom Wire, and Jon Favreau says it's heavy for him. Jon Favreau reveals Pedro Pascal's Mandalorian is not Star Wars Aragorn after disappointing season 3. Let me read that again, just in case I missed it. Jon Favreau reveals Pedro Pascal's Mandalorian is not Star Wars Aragorn after disappointing season 3. So I guess he was indicating that I guess a lot of people thought that Din Djarin was going to be, I guess, the ruler of Mandalore. Maybe that's what he means. Well, let's find out in this article. But for this headline to say after disappointing season 3, it goes to show that it wasn't just me that thought that. All right. All right. And I hope the music isn't too loud. Okay. I hope you can at least hear it a little bit. Sorry, but I need to keep dabbing because I'm melting. Pink towel for Vader. All right. Whatever. While Star Wars may be a cinematic franchise that started in the late 1970s, the craze and appeal of the franchise have continued to grow with no signs of stopping. And expand upon this universe and dive deeper into the lore, Lucasfilm introduced The Mandalorian, a show that detailed the tale of a lone bounty hunter from the planet Mandalore. He's not from the planet Mandalore. Whoever wrote this, shame on you, he's not from Mandalore. He was born on another planet. He was a foundling, and I believe he was brought to, was it Concordia, I believe, in the Mandalorian system? But he wasn't from Mandalore. All right. And before we knew it, back to the article, before we knew it, the show became one of the best additions to the expansion of the Star Wars cinematic universe, reaching success levels that even the main films of the franchise weren't able to reach because the main films were poop. And I'll get into why they were poop after the article, okay? But with the conclusion of the 3rd season of the series, people were visibly disappointed with the decisions that the showrunners took with Din Djarin's character. Now, I'm very interested to hear about this. Ever since the 1st season of Disney Plus, The Mandalorian, fans had come to connect with Pedro Pascal and his in-show persona, a Mandalorian named Din Djarin, and his little companion named Grogu, who we knew affectionately for the better part of 2 seasons as Baby Yoda, okay? Together, they traversed the outer rim of the galaxy far, far away in order to reach their destinations. Therefore, with the 3rd season of the show, fans were excited to finally see Djarin reach his home planet of Mandalore, okay? Here, the lone bounty hunter had to go through many trials and tribulations to atone for his sin of taking off his mask in the 2nd season, while the show also introduced Bo-Katan as another important character of the story. But by far, the most important event that took place was Djarin getting a hold of the Darksaber, the fabled lightsaber that only the leader of the Mandalorians may wield. Before I continue the article, I was having multiple discussions with people, and I was telling them that Mandalorian Season 3 should have been called Bo-Katan. Because the Mandalorian, Din Djarin, that we came to know and love for the first 2 seasons, he and Grogu were pushed to the side. And Bo-Katan was kind of put into the forefront, and that's where a lot of my disappointment came from. All right, just to be honest, okay? Now, again, those are just my thoughts, so I'm going to type in the chat, what did you guys think of The Mandalorian Season 3? All right. With this, fans and audiences were convinced that Pedro Pascal's character would have the same revelation as Aragorn from the Lord of the Rings franchise. But to everyone's disappointment, Bo-Katan was revealed to become the leader of Planet Mandalore in the series finale. I'm not really surprised by that, but let me get back to the article. While this may have come as a shock to many, showrunner Jon Favreau has some explanations that may make you connect the dots and realize that all that happened was destined to be. Okay? I think people expected Mando. He had the sword. He's going to take the throne. He's going to change from a traveling bounty hunter to Aragorn or something. And this is Jon Favreau saying that. And you felt like, oh, that seems like where you're going to go with it. But if you look at the clues, it actually, hopefully, makes you reach the conclusion of where we went. Because if you notice from the first time Din Djarin uses the Darksaber, it's heavy for him. Even the armorer tells him that. Okay? Okay. Therefore, the conclusion that many found to be unexpected was somehow explained by the creator, although it still didn't change the fact that it was somewhat disappointing for the fans. What's next for The Mandalorian? With the end of Season 3 in the recent past, there have been no more reports of a fourth season coming out in the near future by either Disney or Lucasfilm. But Favreau has confirmed that he has written the scripts for the fourth season already, which means that there is still a possibility of its return. As for what the plot will be, no one knows for certain, but what we know is that in Djarin's tutelage, Grogu is growing up to be an exceptional user of the Force as they continue their journey through the galaxy. Now, let me give my thoughts on The Mandalorian Season 3. I was disappointed, especially by 2 episodes. The Convert, which was episode 3, and Guns for Hire, which was episode 6. I really felt as if they dropped the ball on both of those episodes in particular. Okay? First of all, The Convert isn't even about Mando and Grogu. It's about Dr. Pershing and Elia Kane, who from the first time she appeared, I said, she's working for Moff Gideon. Immediately, I said, I don't trust her face. I don't trust her at all. Guns for Hire, Din Djarin and Bo-Katan go to, I don't remember the name of the planet. They go there to, because that's where the rest of the Mandalorians are. What's his name? Axe Woves and Casca Reeves and a whole bunch of other Mandalorians. I'm like, how do they know this like right away that that's where they are? And in that episode, the Mandalorians were kind of becoming mercenaries. And I thought from the beginning of the episode, I was like, this is great. We're going to see like Axe Wolves. I would much rather see Axe Wolves and Casca Reeves' adventures than Dr. Pershing and Elia Kane. To me, episode 3 was the worst. In the entire series, that is the worst. And number 6, Guns for Hire, that I'm talking about right now, was the next to the worst in the entire series. So this one, Jack Black and Lizzo are in it for some reason. Grogu sees that Lizzo had, I don't remember what her name was. She has like snacks. He like does a somersault into her lap. Din Djarin lets him, even though Din Djarin knows that Imperials aren't to be trusted. Then Din Djarin leaves Grogu with these Imperials that are shady and goes off of Bo-Katan so that they can stop this like droid uprising, which had the most disappointing finale of any adventure in the history of Star Wars. Christopher Lloyd, this like 85-year-old Confederate sympathizer, was reprogramming these droids to just go haywire. And it was horrible. And then at the end, Din Djarin just hands the Darksaber over to Bo-Katan. I'm like, this is trash! And then Bo-Katan fights Axe Wolves. And it's like for leadership of the Mandalorians. It's like, that's not how it works. You only fight for the Darksaber. So for Din Djarin to just hand it over, like, it was so cheap, so corny, boo. Episode 6, boo. Episode 3, boo. And the rest of the season was just sort of up and down. It was all right. You know, I don't remember the names of the episodes because I've only seen the season 3 once. And that's rare because I've watched season 1 and season 2 in their entirety at least 5 times. At least. So this third season, very disappointing. Bo-Katan was given everything on a silver platter. She had to rescue Mando twice in the Mines of Mandalore. I did like the fact that she became a leader, but she wasn't entitled to become the leader of Mandalore. She once was the leader. She surrendered to Moff Gideon, which isn't anything the Mandos do. So she's doing a lot of non-Mandalorian things, and then we're supposed to believe that she's supposed to be the rightful leader. just because she knows how to use the darksaber. Okay, she had the thing for I don't know how many years. But she had it for a long time. She was given the darksaber by Sabine Wren in Rebels. So if you haven't seen Star Wars Rebels, the computer animated series, I would suggest you watch it. It's a very good series. It's a very quality series. Okay, so it's not something you have to watch, but I would suggest you watch it. So the fact that everything's being given to her on a silver platter, I'm like, boo, boo. I think it could have been better written. If Mando and Grogu were still the focus of the season, I wouldn't have cared if Bo-Katan became the leader. She was sort of destined to become the leader, but she kind of went around Robin Hood's barn just to be in receivership of the leadership of Mandalore. All right. And the fact that Moff Gideon was already on Mandalore, it was cheap to me. Season 3 was very cheap to me. But anyway, that's what this was about. Jon Favreau said that he knows that fans are disappointed. He said that he expected he said that a lot of fans expected Mando to become the leader of the Mandalorians. And to me, there really is no conclusion to Mando's story because he's just doing the exact same thing that he'd always been doing. So it's like seasons 1, 2, and 3, he just went full circle in a bad way. And even though I did love the image of him having his own house on Navarro with Grogu like playing around with frogs. But he's right back where he began. So we're basically starting from scratch with season 4 that Jon Favreau apparently has already written the script for. But what is there left to do besides kill him? And nobody wants that. But anyway, that's the conclusion of this. Let's get into the Phantom Menace. Okay. Just to be thorough, I want to find out when it was released. Okay, May 19th, 1999 is when the Phantom Menace first hit theaters. I believe I did see it on the first day. Okay. The opening crawl was kind of like, huh? Because you're being newly immersed into the world of Star Wars. So I'm like, Trade Federation, Naboo. I'm reading, I'm like, okay. It's like Jedi Knights are secretly dispatched by the Supreme Chancellor. I'm like, all right, so okay. So immediately we're on Naboo. I'm sorry, we're in a Trade Federation ship where the 2 Jedi that are dispatched by the Supreme Chancellor Valorum to negotiate a settlement for the Nubians. That's what people from Naboo are called, Nubians. All right. So they meet with the Nemoidians, the Viceroy, and his other goons. All right. When they first appeared, I'm going to be honest, okay? When they first appeared on the screen, people were laughing at the design of the Nemoidians. All right. Did I think they were funny looking? No, but they were alien. But for some reason, people found them funny looking. And again, I'm talking about the very first day the Phantom Menace came out, okay? So they're laughing at the Nemoidians, the way they look. I thought it was healthy to have aliens sort of immersed in being an essential part of the new prequel universe, okay? So the Jedi turned out to be Qui-Gon Jinn, who we've never heard of, and his apprentice, Obi-Wan Kenobi. So I'm like, wait a minute. I thought Obi-Wan was trained by Yoda. And that's where the prequels comes in, the series that I do on this channel. It's how the original trilogy has been irrevocably changed by the revisionist history of the prequels. And that is revisionist history. All of a sudden, he has this new master. So I'm like, okay. So he wasn't trained by Yoda. So he's trained by Qui-Gon Jinn, who I buy. I buy Qui-Gon Jinn as a Jedi Master. Liam Neeson is a great actor. We get to see Jedi in action. We see them using the Force. We see them just blocking. Like the B-1 battle droids are just no opposition. Blocking, using the Force push. When the droidicas roll up, they do like a Force dash. And I'm like, whoa, like that was cool. I've never seen that before. And you just see how powerful, how formidable these Jedi Knights are at the peak of their power. All right. So and they're very confident. I don't want to say arrogant, but they're very confident. Like Qui-Gon tells his apprentice Obi-Wan Kenobi, "You stow aboard another ship. You're going to be fine by yourself. I'm going to stay on this ship, and we're going to go down to the surface and warn the Naboo because an invasion is coming." Because they see all these forces being marshaled on the ships, and that's when Obi-Wan says, "You were right about one thing, Master. The negotiations were short." So let's go back to something Obi-Wan Kenobi notices. When Obi-Wan Kenobi removes his hood, he says, "I sense something elsewhere, elusive." So as soon as he comes aboard the Trade Federation ship, he senses Darth Sidious. He senses the evil that Darth Sidious is orchestrating right then and there, immediately. Young Padawan, Obi-Wan, senses Darth Sidious right away. And Qui-Gon just says, I think he said, "Don't centralize your anxieties," or something, whatever. He says, "Keep your focus here and now." So only focus on what's going on now. This, and I'm going down a rabbit trail here. This begs the question. In Attack of the Clones, how are the bigwigs of the Jedi Council not able to sense the evil on Chancellor Palpatine, who is Darth Sidious, when Padawan Obi-Wan sensed it right away? How does Yoda, this wizened alien that's 900 years old, have no idea that Chancellor Palpatine is Darth Sidious? I don't buy that. To me, that's bad story. Bad story. When I'm repeating myself. When Padawan Obi-Wan realized right away that something evil, elusive, was on the Federation ship. Inconsistent. And the Phantom Menace is sort of racked with production inconsistencies. Okay. But let's just go back into the deep dive. So they go down to the surface of Naboo. That's where they meet Jar Jar Binks, who was a heavily maligned character in this movie. The actor who portrayed him, who did the stop motion for him, Ahmed Best, has just been like mercilessly ridden through the mud by just rabid Star Wars fans. And he didn't deserve any of that vitriol from them. None of it. He was just doing his job. George Lucas wanted him to be a lighthearted, funny character. And there were times when he was kind of annoying. There was times when there's a little too much humor. Wasn't funny at times. He just looked like a goofball. There wasn't really anything unique to him except his patterns of speech, which I thought were pretty funny. But Jar Jar was sort of the main. I guess he was supposed to be the 3PO and R2 of this first episode, because you're kind of seeing these intergalactic events take place on this one planet, Naboo, with these powerful Jedi through the dim-witted eyes of Jar Jar Binks. So they're introduced to Jar Jar Binks. They go to the underworld Gungan cities that are hidden beneath the surface. So they're an amphibious aquatic species. But they can be up on land for God knows how long. So they're amphibious, I guess. They can either be underwater for a long time or on air for a long time, which is cool. But back to Ahmed Best. It's not like he got the Andy Serkis treatment. You know what I mean? Like, he was the first person to ever be a stand-in computer animated character. Ever. He's the first actor to do motion capture for a computer animated character. Strictly computer animated. So he didn't deserve any of the death threats or just threats, period. He didn't deserve it. He's an actor. He's an actor. Okay. So Qui-Gon uses a Jedi mind trick on Boss Nass of the Gungan people. So because remember, their mission is to warn the Naboo of the Trade Federation's invasion. So they get in a bunko or whatever it's called. You see them like in the deepest parts of the planet, and the ship is not crushed at those depths, which is, I guess, a credit to Star Wars technology. They run into all kinds of different creatures. There's always a bigger fish, and they reach their destination, the Nubians, so they can warn Queen Amidala about the treachery of the Trade Federation. Things happen. The Federation invades. The B-1 battle droids, they take over the city, even though they're useless. That goes to show you how terrible the Nubians were. You mean to tell me these B-1 battle droids, there were no super battle droids, Just the B1s took over the whole city. The dim-witted Roger bots. All right, so anyway, they flee aboard a Nubian cruiser with the Queen Amidala and her handmaiden Padme Naberi. Okay, they make it through a blockade somehow. No fighters are dispatched. The ship gets shot once. All these astromechs are dispatched to repair the ship. R2-D2 is shoehorned into this for reasons unknown. I guess just because he's a favorite of the... Let me get the music going again. I guess because he's a favorite of George Lucas's. But there's really no reason for R2-D2 to be in this movie. Or to be in the trilogy, period. There's no reason. Okay? So as soon as he's dispatched, I'm like, okay. Because of the original trilogy, I know R2-D2 is going to save the day again. But we know George Lucas likes to say it's poetry, it rhymes. Whatever you want to say, George. So, of course, R2, he fixes the ship. For some reason, they aren't chased. And this one ship makes it through the blockade. So, my thing was, if it was that easy, why didn't all the fighters do the same thing? Why didn't they just follow them out? Only one ship left. Chill. So, their hyperdrive is damaged. They wind up on Tatooine. This is where they meet young Anakin Skywalker. They meet Watto, who is the slave holder of Anakin and his mother Shmi Skywalker. Qui-Gon Jinn notices there's something about this kid. This kid is hitting on Padme Naberi, the handmaiden to Queen Amidala. You know it's Anakin Skywalker that becomes Darth Vader, so you don't really take any of his circumstances serious. You know he's going to win the pod race, which is one of the best sequences in the movie. Okay? So you know he's going to be fine. You know Obi-Wan Kenobi's going to be fine. You don't know about Jar Jar's future. You don't know about Qui-Gon Jinn's future. You kind of have a good idea that Qui-Gon's going to die. All right? But anyway, so through Anakin wins the pod race, Darth Maul is introduced. And Darth Maul is just a sensational and interesting character. All eyes immediately went to him. Very sinister looking, the red and black on his face. I don't know if they're like tattoos, or if they're just the Zabrakians look that way. Or the Zabrak, I'm not sure. Because they're all from Dathomir. The females that run the planet are the Night Sisters. Okay? And the males are sort of the secondary sentient creatures. And they're basically a warrior class at the behest of Mother Talzin of the Night Sister clan. So Darth Maul is just a captivating character immediately. He has about, one line of dialogue? When he and Darth Sidious are walking through the streets of Coruscant. All right. So Darth Maul encounters Qui-Gon Jinn for the first time. They have a brief lightsaber encounter. Not really a duel. But Qui-Gon escapes aboard the Nubian ship with the hyperdrive freshly installed, and they fly to Coruscant, the center of the galaxy, the nerve center of the Republic. So immediately, we're in the Jedi Councils, the council chambers. We see Samuel L. Jackson's Mace Windu. We see Ki-Adi-Mundi. We see Yoda, Puppet Yoda. And Puppet Yoda works. He had a little too much hair, but it was all good. I dug Puppet Yoda. So we're getting deliberations of the Jedi Council. And I'm like, why are the Jedi Council like this political lobbyist group? As soon as Qui-Gon Jinn said it was a Sith, why didn't they just send people to investigate? Why are they questioning this? The Sith have been extinct for millennia. Then Mace Windu, Samuel L. Jackson character, is like, I do not believe the Sith could have returned without us knowing. Why would Qui-Gon Jinn make this up? To me, this is a bad story. Because Obi-Wan in Star Wars says, for 1,000 generations, the Jedi Knights were the guardians of peace and justice in the Old Republic. Not this Senate Oversight Committee. This is bad. This is a bad aspect of the prequel trilogy. The Jedi Council sitting around doing nothing. So Anakin comes through. He's obviously proficient with the Force. He has great insight because every time Samuel L. Jackson holds the paddle up, every image that shows up, Anakin gets it spot on. He's at a speeder, a ship, a cup, a rubber. And Mace Windu looks at Yoda like, the kid got it right. And they go, we sense darkness in you. He said, And Ki-Adi-Mundi says, "Your thoughts dwell on your mother." And he's like, "I miss her." And the Jedi are acting really dumb here. It's like, of course he misses her. He's only 10 years. He's 10 years old. He's a boy. He wasn't taken from his family like most of the Jedi are. They're usually taken as like newborns. So they have no attachments. So obviously he's attached, but they see how powerful he is. So common sense, like, come on, man. Common sense would have said, with somebody this raw and this powerful, he must be trained as a Jedi. This whole, he will not be trained. That was stupid. That was just absolutely stupid. No, he will not be trained. And Qui-Gon Jinn's like, no, like, what's wrong with you all? They're like, he's too old. I'm like, you got to be kidding me that they make the Jedi this corny. Come on, George, why'd you make the Jedi this corny? Like, this is whack. And now the Jedi have a bad reputation in contemporary Star Wars because of how badly they were portrayed in the prequel trilogy. This was bad. This is bad to me. Okay. So then they say, we don't have time for this. Really? You don't? So they said that Queen Amidala is going back to Naboo. They said accompany her. Listen to this. They say, go back there to widen the confrontation and draw out the Queen's attacker. Why just 2 Jedi? Why just a Jedi Master and his apprentice? Why not send a host of Jedi? And then Samuel L. Jackson's character, Mace Windu, leans forward and says, this is the information we need to unlock the mystery of the Sith. What mystery? Why didn't you just send everybody? These clowns, the Jedi Council, showed up after everything was over with. Why? Why? If the harm is out of the way, why do you want to show up now when you're supposed to enforce peace and justice? Stupid. Stupid. So they wind up, I'm sorry. I love Star Wars. I'm sorry. But when it's bad, it's bad. So they go back to Naboo. Not a single shot is fired at them when there's supposed to be a blockade around the planet. They return without somebody even looking out the windows, frowning at them. You went through our blockade. Not a hide or hair of a blockade. Or somebody might say, well, Darth Sidious, he wanted them to go back to do what? Why? If you'd have blew up the ship, you had an easier time to take over Naboo. And he would have killed, what, 2 Jedi? It's a little mindless. The Phantom Menace is a little mindless story-wise. It just doesn't make sense. So they wind up. Darth Sidious says in conference, with the Viceroy, he says, this is an unexpected move for her. It's too aggressive. So he tells Darth Maul, Lord Maul, be mindful. Let them make the first move. So they gather in the swamp, and later he goes, she's more foolish than I thought. It's like you just told her, well, you told Darth Maul to let them make the first move. They made the first move, and now this will work to our advantage. How does it work to your advantage when a second ago you were confused by this aggressive move? And now, oh, this is perfect. What's perfect, Darth Sidious? What's perfect about this? Wipe them out, all of them. Why didn't you just say that from the beginning? You could have said, this is an aggressive move for the Queen of Naboo. Let them make the first move and wipe them out. It's like inconsistencies with Darth Sidious. Is this a great move? Is it a terrible move? Is it an aggressive move? Is it a foolish move? What? So the Gungans are sort of invited to fight alongside them because they see the Trade Federation is a problem not just to the Naboo, but also to the Gungans because they are a symbiotic society. War ensues, and as much as I'm talking about the Phantom Menace, the movie, and all its inconsistencies, I really like the movie, okay? I'm just highlighting things I don't like, okay? So we sort of set off in a new frontier with this battle in the Phantom Menace, because now every big digital battle, I'm talking about Infinity War, when Thanos' troops land in Wakanda, Lord of the Rings, when the Rohirrim arrive at the fields of Pelennor, they can all be traced back to the Phantom Menace with these big digital environmental landscapes and digital characters. Thank As C-3PO said, thank the maker, George Lucas, for once again revolutionizing movies. George Lucas is just a genius, and I hate the fact that he had to suffer so much backlash because of the prequels. Okay, and I am kind of giving a little bit of backlash, but it's for the story, not for the man. Does that make sense? Like, I would never decry a person, even Kathleen Kennedy. I would never decry a person because of decisions that they make for the entertainment genre. I can say these are terrible moves, but to come personally at George Lucas or Dave Filoni or Jon Favreau or Kathleen Kennedy is ridiculous to me because they're people. They want to eat, they want to live. Okay. Let me get off my soapbox. So there's this huge digital battle. It's a forerunner for every digital battle to come after it. Okay. There's a space battle. Anakin and R2 are embroiled into the space battle, trying to deactivate the droid control ship of the Trade Federation so they can shut down all the B-1 battle droids on the ground, fighting the Gungans and the Nubians. And we get to the good stuff. Duel of the Fates, one of the greatest sequences in the history of the Star Wars series. Darth Maul versus Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi. Easily one of my favorite lightsaber battles of all time. You see Darth Maul finally pull his hood all the way back. You see a little bit of his horns when he's having a little encounter with Qui-Gon Jinn on Tatooine. Again, how Darth Maul found them on Tatooine is beyond me. More inconsistency because Obi-Wan said, don't reply to the general, it's probably a trap. So how Darth Maul found them, I don't know. Anyway, he got it down to the planet and the same section of the planet where they were with 3 little bots. Anyway, so they're fighting. Darth Maul shows like an acrobatic style that we've never seen before, courtesy of Ray Park. Kudos, Ray Park. Great. Immortalized on screen as Darth Maul. He has a double-bladed lightsaber, so there's lightsaber blades coming out of both ends. And his style is just fantastic. I love the opening of this battle. In the process, Qui-Gon Jinn is killed by Darth Maul. He's stabbed right through his chest. Even though nowadays in Disney Star Wars, you can get impaled and come right back like the Grand Inquisitor did and like Reva did. Dumb. So Qui-Gon Jinn is killed. Obi-Wan, I love the part where he's fighting Darth Maul on his own. You see before the shield door opens, he's like bouncing. He's ready. I'm like, this is hot. Then they're just moving at a breakneck pace. The choreography is on point. Darth Maul is doing like kicks. He's doing flips. He's doing round-offs. Like, it's awesome. Obi-Wan proves how great he is. He cuts the double-bladed lightsaber in half so that Darth Maul now only has one lightsaber. And I don't know how proficient he was with the one lightsaber because he needed to use like a force push because Obi-Wan kind of had him at a standstill. He wasn't really a match for him with the double-bladed lightsaber. But he's like, they're like kind of like blocking each other, and then he goes, pow! And Obi-Wan tumbles down the shaft. Here's another corny part. I don't remember how big the diameter of the shaft is that he's holding on to this one thing, Obi-Wan is. And Darth Maul's like scraping the edge of the shaft and trying to, I guess, frighten Obi-Wan or whatever. So Darth Maul has the ultimate high ground. It's an enclosed space. So the only place he can go, Obi-Wan, is up, if he can. So Obi-Wan does just that, even though Darth Maul has the ultimate high ground. He flips up. For some reason, all Darth Maul had to do was just hold his lightsaber out, and we would have been talking about Obi-Wan in the past tense. But we knew Obi-Wan was going to survive. And that's a lot of times a problem with prequels where you go back in time and talk about major characters, because you know they're going to survive. All Darth Maul had to do was just hold his lightsaber out, and Obi-Wan would have been in hemispheres. So he winds up behind Darth Maul, catches Qui-Gon Jinn's lightsaber, he cuts Darth Maul in half, and Darth Maul falls down the shaft and dies, okay? And that is basically the end of the movie. It ends with the Duel of the Fates, it ends with the Trade Federation surrendering, and it ends with Senator Palpatine becoming Chancellor Palpatine of the Republic. And for some reason, they give it away that Palpatine is Darth Sidious right at the end of the movie. Right at the end, they let you know that it's him. Because Mace Windu says to Yoda, there's no doubt the mysterious warrior was a Sith. You should have checked that out for yourself before Qui-Gon Jinn died, stupid. So Yoda says, always two there are, a master and an apprentice. So Yoda did know about the dark side. He didn't know about the Sith. Okay. So Mace Windu says, but which one was destroyed, the master or the apprentice? You know that the apprentice was destroyed, but now they confirm it for you. And it pans, there's sinister music, it lands right on Palpatine. And I'm sitting there in theaters like, okay, so if nobody knew now they know that Ian McDermott is the Emperor, Ian McDermott is Darth Sidious. Brainless at times, but I really like this movie, The Phantom Menace. It's not as good as any of the originals, but it's definitely a movie that I like. It is not my favorite movie of the prequels, okay? But it's a likable movie. They kind of get a little long in the tooth on Tatooine. The Jedi are boring for some reason, and I just don't understand why. The Senate is boring, so it's a lot of spaces of just like blah blah blah. It's the action sequences are too far in between. Nothing happens on Coruscant at all, except yakety yak, don't come back. And it's a flawed movie, but it's a good movie that I enjoy. All right. So I'm just about a minute over the hour mark, and I hope you guys enjoy this. It's sort of a podcast, because I rarely get anybody that comes in and comments or interacts, but it's whatever. I'm going to keep doing this until I improve. Hopefully I'll have the technology to get something on this green screen and be a little more interactive technologically. So I'm not just talking into this and seeing nothing on the chat or whatever. So we're trying to grow. Darth Vader Unlimited is growing and will soon spread across the galaxy. May the Force be with you.